In this video, I'm going to be talking about the Champions League matchup between Real Madrid and Manchester City. Real Madrid came out in a 4-3-3 formation, and Man City came out in an unusual for them 4-4-2. Let's look at how Man City tried to build out of the back in their 4-4-2 against Real Madrid. If we start here from a goal kick, we can see that they built up in basically the 4-4-2 shape, just pushing the fullbacks higher along the midfield line and their outside midfielders up alongside the forwards. Real Madrid were very man-oriented, and you can see how they stepped out of their 4-3-3 in order to mark man-to-man. Benzema stepped over to Man City's right center back, Otamendi, and then Modric would step up out of midfield to cover the opposite center back. This allowed Isco to drop in and not require him to work as hard in the press. Because they were so man-oriented while pressing, it left City with very few options. One option that happened a few times was Ederson trying to go very deep with his free kicks that go all the way down the field. So they would look for either Mahrez or Jesus on the wings, cutting in towards the middle of the field. So you could see a long pass coming into Mahrez here. When they did try to build up out of the back, they passed over to Laporte or Fernandinho when he came in for the injured Laporte here on the left side. Rodri would then drop in deeper of the two in the double pivot behind Gundogan. Modric and Casemiro would follow their marks high up the field. And now this left basically a 3v3 down each wing. So for example, here down the left wing, Bernardo Silva and De Bruyne and Silva swap positions quite often. But for this example, we'll say Bernardo Silva's on the left, along with Gabriel Jesus and Benjamin Mendy. So to take advantage of this 3v3, there would be a lot of movements and counter movements from the Man City players. So as you might expect from a playmaker like Bernardo Silva, he would drop deep. Jesus then would be looking to cut in between the right fullback Carvajal and Varane, and then Mendy would be pushing up higher down the wing. This would so now it becomes confusing for Real Madrid. Do they follow their man marks? Because if they do, Varane is going to step out of position. Carvajal is going to have to tuck in on Jesus, and Isco is going to get pushed back really deep. So if they could find Silva here in this spot, now we see this situation playing out. If Varane steps, then the pass to Jesus and behind him is wide open. If we go back. And now, if we say Carvajal would step and Varane would cover, now Mendy has space down the wing to run into. And basically, this takes advantage of Isco not wanting to track back. And not necessarily being lazy, but not wanting to be pinned back alongside his defenders. Again, you had a similar thing happening down the right-hand side. And again, it could be Silva or De Bruyne, but if it's De Bruyne here, dropping in, Mahrez cutting in between the fullback and center back on this side, and then Kyle Walker overlapping. He was more reserved, though, and defensive, which is why it happened down this left-hand side a bit more often with Mendy and Jesus being more of a typical forward. One way I think Man City could have exploited this 3v3 on each wing a little bit more often was to drop into a back three and then force either Isco to come up and press or try to drag one of the midfielders even further out of position. So if Rodri would drop in between the center backs a bit more and get Gundogan in the middle of the field. Now as Real Madrid follow their marks, you can see we open up these spaces here in the half space when trying to build up. So you can see De Bruyne and Silva could both drop into these spaces and force either a center back to come out and cover them, leaving space in behind, or force a winger to tuck in and cover them, leaving a fullback open, or force a fullback to come cover them, leaving the winger open, which could be exploited with Ederson's long goal kicks. So now if we move to how Real Madrid built up and how Man City defended that. They defended in a 4-4-2 shape, but again, they were also very man-oriented. So what would happen in the forward line, De Bruyne, if the ball's on this side, De Bruyne would then press the ball, and then the other forward, in this case Bernardo Silva, would press the other center back. Then in the midfield line, Gundogan would be the one tracking Casemiro man-to-man, and Rodri would cover the space that Gundogan leaves if that's more dangerous than the space he's currently in. So here we see Gundogan stepping, and because the ball's on this side, this space is more dangerous than where Rodri was, so he steps across. Another interesting thing that happened in the midfield line was Jesus on the left side seemed to be man-marking Carvajal quite tightly, even if the ball was on the outside of the field. So you would see him step out into this position more often. Mahrez on the opposite side, on the right side, was not nearly as tight to Ferland Mendy here. He was much more zonal, so if the ball was on the far side of the field, instead of man-marking tight, he would definitely drop in and either help on a midfielder or take up space in this area. So one thing Real Madrid did, especially in the first half, was drop Casemiro in between the center backs, or at least deeper, drawing Gundogan with him. So now you can see the space for Real Madrid is here, in behind the midfield two, and in between Jesus, because he's man-marking Carvajal. So really Real Madrid should have been looking to play Modric the ball here quite a bit more often. And they did occasionally, but a lot of the issue came with Isco trying to drop into this space and collect the ball, which allowed Benjamin Mendy then to come over and stop this space from being wide open. So what Modric realized he had to do was to step up to the forward line to keep Mendy back. And this is why Isco in the first half had quite a bit of the ball for Real Madrid, because he would drop into these spaces and pick up the ball. In the second half, Zidane made changes here, and the main change was Modric came over to the left and Valverde played on the right. I think defensively this was so that Isco had a bit more help in the pressing phase of the game for Real Madrid. But so we see here, Modric came over and Valverde then took up this spot, trying to keep pressure on the back line of Man City. A lot of the times he would even come out wider, playing more as a right midfielder, to keep Mendy dragged back here. And this allowed Isco to pick up this space in here. Also, because Modric was on this left side now, Rodri, like I said before, would not follow Casemiro. Gundogan would, because Rodri is more of a holding midfielder who likes to sit back. So now when he's covering this space, instead of before when we had Valverde here trying to get the ball, now you have Modric dropping deeper to get the ball, and Rodri doesn't really want to step out to him. And basically those movements are what we saw for all of the goals. For Man City's goals, it was when Sterling came on for Jesus and terrorized this gap in between here from the left midfield spot, cutting in between the fullback and the center back, or even on the blind side of the fullback. And for Real Madrid, their goal came with a bit of a mistaken build-up from Man City, but it was Vinicius Jr. who got on the ball and then played it across to an attacking Isco. Thanks for watching, and please leave any feedback in the comments.